Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Michael Kelly, and joining us this evening from the Australian Army is Corporal Jeanette McNeely. We warmly welcome the family of Private Robert Harold Smith, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Robert Harold Smith. Robert Harold Smith was born in 1896, one of 8 children born to Robert and Phoebe Smith of Solomon Town, a suburb of Port Pirie on the Spencer Gulf in South Australia. His father worked on the waterfront and later in the Pirie smelters. Robert attended the local school and afterwards worked as a fruit hawker in the local area. He also paraded with the senior cadets before being discharged on medical grounds. When Smith first tried enlisting in the Australian Imperial Force in 1915, he was deemed medically unfit and turned away. In an effort to maintain reinforcement quotas in the face of the mounting casualties from the fighting in Gallipoli, the recruiting standards were relaxed midway through the year, which allowed Smith to enlist successfully in August 1915. After several months of training in Adelaide, in January 1916, he sailed for Egypt with a reinforcement group for the 16th Battalion. By the time Smith arrived in Egypt, the Australian Imperial Force had evacuated from Gallipoli and was undergoing a major restructure before embarking for France. As part of the doubling up of the AIF, Smith was transferred to the newly raised 48th Battalion, which formed part of the 4th Division that sailed for France in March 1916. The battalion spent several weeks in the relatively quiet sector of the front line near the town of Armentières, on the Franco-Belgian border, patrolling no man's land at night and conducting raids on the German trenches. In May, Smith would have received news that his father had unexpectedly passed away in April. Leaving his widowed mother and 5 siblings solely dependent on his army pay. In July, the 4th Division transferred to the Somme, where it participated in the bit of fighting for Pozières. On the 7th of August, just as the division entered the front line, it thwarted a German counterattack. After a brief spell behind the lines, Smith and his battalion again entered the front line on the 12th of August and occupied the area known as the Windmill. Severely under strength, after fighting of the previous days, the battalion was subjected to German shell fire, as the men did what they could to improve their defensive positions. When the battalion was relieved 3 days later, it had suffered 118 casualties, including Private Robert Smith, who is believed to have been killed during the German bombardment on the 12th of August. Aged just 19 when he died, Robert's body was never recovered from the battlefield. Today, he is commemorated on the Australian National Memorial at Villa Bretonneux, alongside more than 10,000 Australians killed in France who have no known grave. After learning of the death of her son, Robert's mother wrote the following epitaph to appear in the local newspaper. Somewhere in France, there is a treasured spot where our son and brother is laid to rest, but he proudly did his best. Robert Smith's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst more than 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. We now remember Private Robert Harold Smith, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's closing ceremony. We thank you very much for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you a good evening. Thank you.